I'm Lindsay, and this is my Module 9 art assignment on cultural sensitivity and disability. And I think that to be culturally sensitive, it really means just being aware of the surroundings that you're in and what you're seeing on a daily basis. And to have disability issues and to have issues revolving around disability, I think it's just really important to be, again, just like you are with being culturally sensitive, just making sure that you're very aware of how disability is approached throughout culture. And from my personal experience, I have never really, growing up in a small town, I never really felt like I had a lot of cultural sensitivity because I was one dominant culture, and there was a couple people in my school that had disability, but it wasn't something that was very common. And I think throughout this module I learned a lot about disability throughout culture. So for example, I've always known that in Japanese culture it's very common to have to feel like you have to reach this very high standard, and that's just kind of expanded on, I feel like, with disability, because then when someone has a disability through the reading, I learned they're more seen as abnormal. And that makes, even though it's wrong, it makes sense as far as what fits in with Japanese culture and having to reach this perfectionist state of being. And I didn't really have any awareness of Japanese culture. It's not a culture I've studied, or I don't have a lot of friends that are from Japan. So I'm not very aware of what disability really means in Japan. And so I think that the modules just really showed me what that means and how that can be understood through the readings and the videos. And I think that the video I really enjoyed the most was in the third encounter that we had, and it kind of talked about how people in Japan have gone from, instead of group housing where there's disability, they've gone to living individually and having the government subsidize people to come in and live on with them, or come in and help with them with simple things like cooking or doing chores. And I think that's a really good way to approach disability, and it's a different way of looking at it from a different culture. That's not something I would have maybe thought of before, just because you'd think it'd be easier to have everybody with a disability in one place and have caretakers than for people with disabilities to be living on their own with caretakers coming in. So I just learned a lot throughout this module and how disability can be reached. One thing I'm going to talk about in my DWL possibly is when I was in Africa, one of the things was that I noticed is different about disability is that people who have leprosy are kind of put in these homes that people can come visit, and that's just another thing to be culturally sensitive to, because it's a huge part of what their African history has gone throughout, and it's very different from how we might approach that in the United States. And in Africa, it's seen more as an honor to have something like that, because it really tells your story of who you are. So I kind of wanted to draw, make sure you can see it with my non-dominant hand, just a line through the middle, and half of it representing what I viewed before, kind of more in high school when I was growing up and not really aware of the world and aware of disability and cultural sensitivity, and then after that and seeing how that has developed over time. So if I were to draw it, I would say that, I'd say that this is myself, and me, and I'm happy because I'm kind of in my own little world and I don't really understand what's going on that much around me other than what I see on a daily. And I would draw the world kind of around me. Draw the countries in here. Yeah. So I would draw myself, there's me, and there's the world around me, and as you can see, I'm about the same size, maybe a little smaller than the world, and that's just kind of how my perception is. I think that we can all say that we've experienced that, where we feel like we're just in kind of not like we run the world or we own the world, but just that we we don't have any sensitivity to anything because we've never experienced that, so we don't have anywhere to say like that the world is a big place and things are handled differently across culture, especially for disability. So I think over time, and especially through reading these modules, I would say I'd put myself, draw myself here, in almost this state of like, not being unhappy, but just being more aware of the situations that are happening around me. And I think once you become more aware of those situations, you kind of just develop this sense of the world is a bigger place than you and what's going on in your small world. And so for this one, I think I just draw a straight face. And it's not that I'm not happy, it's just that I'm more sensitive to what's going on around me and kind of taking it in. And then for this one, I think I would definitely say this goes to making the world a much bigger place. And you kind of see it as this place of, wow, like I'm not the only one that lives here. And it's amazing to see how across different cultures people handle things differently. And so as you can see, the difference between the two, starting out as not really seeing the world as that much of a place, and maybe everybody just kind of handles everything the same way. And then moving in through Module 9 and throughout just like growing through life, just seeing like myself as a smaller person and the things that are going on in the world as a much bigger concept and a much more culturally sensitive world than I ever would have thought it to be.